It is the December 10th. Well, we're recording this on the 9th. It's close enough. December 9th/10th edition of the PFF Forecast. This is a great one. We've got Soren Petro, Chiefs aficionado. We're going to talk a ton about the Chiefs and Mahomes. He has a really good story about Andy Reid that you want to stick around for. And before that, we're going to hit the weekly slate. Let's get it. Realize I didn't say let's rock. I don't know if that's official, but I just said it here. We have Soren on the show. He's fantastic. You have a Bill Walton quote that's also incredible. This is a whirlwind week. I was thinking back to last week. We had a Wednesday game. I didn't mind the Wednesday game. There was no Thursday. You got that. It was a little bit of a rest.
It was weird, though, because, so you do the simulation Tuesday normally, and then you had to wait till Thursday. This week, we at least got to do it on Wednesday. It's going to be nice.
Yeah.
Not having a Tuesday game next week or a Wednesday game.
You better watch out.
Better not cry. Better not. Okay. By the way, my kids are, going to Wisconsin this weekend, so we're having and I'm staying here because,
Yeah.
And so we're doing family Christmas tomorrow all of a sudden.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
you didn't tell me about this.
Well,
you gotta wrap presents. We're recording a podcast for it. You gotta
go. So our schools went remote. My wife teaches at their school, but my wife's got to teach during the day at the school. So my kids are at home trying to do work, and I'm trying to shuffle that around. And so my in-laws, we'll take them. So they're just going to stay in Wisconsin for 4 weeks.
Party.
Yeah. So, but then that means we have to do Christmas as a family now. So that's tomorrow.
Somehow the kids just win repeatedly in the scenario.
Dude, they get
just an avalanche of goodness.
It's okay, if anybody, I'm mostly speaking to you,
right.
No kids.
Noted lover of children.
It's always the motivation. Okay, if you don't do this, Christmas is canceled. You don't do this, then Maddie's birthday is February. Okay, your birthday's canceled, and then Chloe's birthday's May. Okay, that's canceled. 4th of July is canceled. Thanksgiving's canceled. Halloween. Halloween's a big one. I don't know if you've actually budgeted this yet in your.
I haven't.
Okay, Halloween's a sink, man. Yeah.
I do the same thing with myself. That's how I get myself through the day.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I do the same thing.
For you, it's like scotch.
You will not be able to drink this tequila tonight if you don't get this done. Actually, the way I do it is I'm you can't work out until you get these things done. That gets me going. And then it's tequila. This week is going to be pretty fun. I like a lot of these games. We're going to talk to Soren about Kansas City, Miami. We'll talk about that here because I actually want to consider it as one of the locks of the week. But let's start on Thursday because we wrote this one up. It was New England +6. It's now New England +5.
Oh.
Yeah, it's moved a little bit. I was curious your thoughts on why, so Green Line, our betting dashboard, our model, doesn't show an edge on either side.
Well, because the key number, your 5 is such a dead number.
You're not getting a lot. Is that that was what I kind of thought.
Plus the total.
Cam Newton a little banged up.
Offensive line, Wynn, Mason, all up, out.
But here's the thing. I always like to think about what's in our models and what's not. And, think about what are some of those ancillary pieces that, might push me one way or the other. And the Jared Goff versus Bill Belichick matchup, the Patriots having been in LA this entire time, I think there's a difference between a road trip and a time to bond with your teammates in Los Angeles sort of deal. And the fact that the Rams, to me, feel like a team that is just not quite ready to sustain success yet. They just had a big win against Arizona. And I don't know. I like the matchup a lot.
Yeah, I can see that. That's why I liked it at 6.
Low total.
I think that's why we advise people to grab it at 6. It's not really a teasable play. It's not in either direction. You don't want to tease through 0 because you're basically just selling points for nothing there. So I mean, I'm probably just going to lay off this after I've gotten the 6. And you could have had the 6. It was Monday. It was probably up to I think 119 on Pinnacle all the way into Tuesday, and then now it's people have the bettors have spoken here, and I think that's really where you want to lay off this.
Who's the better quarterback in that game?
Man, I think Newton is more talented. I think the Rams get more out of Goff. Both players have less than a 43 passer rating when pressured.
Yeah. They're very different, obviously. Cam Newton gets so much.
And neither guy, they have the same big-time throw rate. Goff has a higher turnover-worthy play rate. They're both really kind of meh quarterbacks this year.
Because I think you can make the case that this 6 points or this 5 points is really about the market valuing the Rams defense. And that's something I want to fade as well. I don't think it's very clear. I think Jared Goff, you probably lean that way based on how he's playing this year. But I don't think you can definitively say that Jared Goff is a better quarterback, which means you're in a better quarterback getting 5-point situation. Anyways, I digress. I wanted to make that pitch. I think 6 was the number you wanted it at. If I had to bet that game right now, I would still certainly take New England plus 5, especially with such a low total. Let's go to the next game. What do you want to talk about? Which game?
Let's just get it through. Well, is this game actually available? Let me look. The one that I'm thinking of, but this is probably because of Daniel Jones's injury. I do know that I've seen Arizona laying 2.5 on the road against the Giants. This is a classic, right? And so let's see, and let's make sure that we can actually get this number if we really want to talk about it, because if this thing's under a field goal, you have to take Arizona, right? Because you're buying Arizona at the bottom, right? They really haven't won a game straight up since they started 6-3.
And
right?
Can we talk about?
No. It was they were 5-2, right?
They won the Hail Murray.
Yeah, and they've lost 4 out of the last 5, and that was the one in the middle. So you're buying them low, right? And we talked about this. We were on Kevin's show. We were on Arizona over 7 was not a lock. And the reason is because all of the pop-up teams in the NFL, you see it all the time. A lot of people are a year early on them. And I think the markets were a year early on Arizona. And Cowboys. We're starting to see, Jesus, that one. Stop the count with that one. But with them, it's the passing game. You saw the route map that NGS was throwing out there with Hopkins. Not that creative. Murray is not throwing the ball, really well in the intermediate area. And the defense is not that good. And so, but I look at this game specifically, and if you
that was a great sell job, by the way.
What do you mean? Well,
I get what you're going. I get.
Yeah, but the New York Giants. I mean, come on. Their defense is okay. I think Bradbury will do a good job on Hopkins, but Arizona should be able to go in there and take care of business.
I do not think that there has been a bigger overreaction to one team doing one thing in 1 week than what has happened to the New York Giants. Let's think about what happened this week, okay?
Yeah.
Colt McCoy plays. They beat the Seahawks. All of a sudden, the New York Giants certainly going to win the NFC East.
Booger said that on NFL Primetime. They're the best team in the NFC East. They're going to win the division, definitively. Yeah,
definitively. They get flexed. Think about this. The Cowboys and the 49ers were playing on Sunday night. I would have bet a lot of money that was going to be, well, not a lot of money, but I would have bet, if I had to bet on one game being the most highly rated Sunday night game, I would have bet on that one.
2-story franchises in the NFL, for sure.
It got flexed out so that the Browns and the Giants could play on Sunday Night Football in New York. To say that the Giants' tires are getting pumped is an understatement. Yeah. And I don't understand it because you still don't. Daniel Jones is still the quarterback that makes them good. Colt McCoy did not win that game for them. Let's not overreact here. And also, Daniel Jones is coming back from an injury. Yeah. And a large part of what Daniel Jones, and I think Daniel Jones, when healthy, is easily the best quarterback in that division, has been the best quarterback in that division. Obviously not counting Dak, right? Because he's out now. But this is a really big projection.
And it takes out of consideration that fucking Seattle does this every year. Like,
very true.
They do this every single year. They lost a game, I think, in Tampa one year, like 8-5, like 8-6 or some bullshit like that. Like, they lost at home to Kirk Cousins in the rain that one game in 2017. Like, they just have these farts every year, and it's like
Joe Judge, Coach of the Year, is also cropped up.
Like, let's forget Kevin Stefanski for a second, and then let's forget
Brian Flores. And then let's forget Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, and then let's forget fucking Andy Reid.
And Pete Carroll.
Yeah. I mean, look, the number's not there, so we can't. I don't think in good conscience we can consider it. I would say, though, look, if Daniel Jones is announced a starter,
and it's still
and it's less than a field goal, go ahead and take Arizona, because it's a classic. This team sucks. This team's on the rise. And yeah, sometimes that works, but most of the time you're overreacting to shit. What would this spread have been 3 weeks ago? A touchdown?
I would have gone, I'm putting my thinking hat on here. I'm thinking about Sunday morning. I'm guessing the lines, preparing to duel with you in about 15 hours. And I would have gone 6.5, I think.
Yeah, it's insane. You're getting tremendous value here. If you like the Giants and it's 2.5, go get some Arby's and bet a teaser, I guess. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let me go to my third game, which is another opportunity that I don't think this is less of an opportunity, but it's still an opportunity. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And the Lord in this case is Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I love this one.
Deshaun Watson is the best quarterback in the NFL, not named Patrick Mahomes. And I think he's starting to get close. I mean, he is playing absolutely amazing football. 91.1 overall grade, 120 pass rating from a clean pocket, big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio of close to 4-1. He's incredible. And he gets a chance to basically be in a pick'em situation with Mitchell Trubisky, the quarterback that the Chicago Bears selected over him. And there's a lot of talk, you can go back and look at this, about Deshaun Watson talking about, hey, look, the Bears, they never even hit me up. Like, they had no interest in me. I don't know why. My coach called me the next Michael Jordan. The team in Chicago decided to ignore me. They didn't even check me out. All of this stuff. I am ready. My body is ready to watch Deshaun Watson. Remember when Mahomes went in there and he counted to 10? I can't wait for what Deshaun Watson's going to do to the Chicago Bears. Give me the Houston Texans -1 in Chicago.
Yeah, that one's one I like a lot. Okay.
There's nothing else to say.
No, like, both of these teams are coming off of devastating losses to rivals, right? And I think if I'm going to look at which team will rebound from that better, it's going to be a team who has a player like Deshaun Watson and not a team who has a player like Mitch Trubisky and coached by Matt Nagy.
Let's also remember that the Bears lost to the Lions. The Texans lost to the Colts and they were about to score a touchdown that would have won the game. What is this spread if the Texans punch that in for a touchdown and win the game? I think you could say it might be 3. It might cross 3.
Yeah. I mean,
beating the Colts, that because the Colts are a good team. The Lions are not.
I would say that it's probably 3.5, maybe.
Who would you rather start at quarterback for your team, Mitchell Trubisky or Carson Wentz?
Kendall Hinton. I mean, at least like.
Can the Bears trade for Carson Wentz?
Is their cap's in horrible situation, isn't it? I don't know. We have to ask Brad.
It's a joke. I just think that'd be really funny.
Okay, here's one.
Bears fans would burn down Soldier Field if that happened.
Minnesota +6.5 at Tampa. Everything about this game makes me want to hate Minnesota.
Actually, I went on our friend Matthew Collar's podcast. He's fantastic. He's great. If you haven't checked out his podcast, Purple Insider, yeah. Yep,
he does great work.
He does fantastic work. And it's interesting even if you're not a Vikings fan. If you're a Tampa Bay Bucks fan, you should go listen to it. But we talked about this game. And the more that I thought about this game, the more I liked the Vikings getting 6.5 points. And can I tell you my number one reason, then you can rock into yours? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to run the ball on first down an obnoxious number of times. And it's going to give Kirk Cousins just the opportunity he needs to get through that back door.
Can I say this without being, now this is a little facetious.
Probably not.
Tongue in cheek, but Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback getting points in this game.
Oh my God.
Like Kirk's playing
Say
very
that again
well.
for the people in the back. Who's a better quarterback than him?
I'm joking.
Yeah,
but Kirk is not that much worse than Brady is this year, is he not? Kirk's playing really well.
Here's what I would say. In a vacuum, it's not close. Tom Brady is a better quarterback. But we have not seen a lot of examples of Tom Brady and the passing game producing outcomes that are commensurate with the process that Tom Brady puts in. And what I mean by that is, like, Tom Brady's playing really well, and yet somehow the Tampa Bay Bucks offense doesn't really scare you that much. Like, if you said, hey, I'm going to give Andy Reid, Tom Brady, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin, like every team in the NFL's pooped their pants. But no one's pooping their pants against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Whereas the Minnesota Vikings,
well, it's the polarization, right? It's why no one is pooping their pants at the United States anymore. It's polarization. Like, you have Brady. It's a culture war between Brady and Arians right now.
Do you think we can
and
work?
Brady. That's why Brady is preferring to throw it to Fat Lenny in the flat instead of run the offense.
Do you think we can work that phrase into the pod repeatedly? Swimming butt naked in an ocean of sin, as they say.
Is the offense swimming butt naked in the ocean of sin? I feel like they are.
Kirk Cousins.
Sorry.
121 passer rating from a clean pocket. Tom Brady, 109. Tom Brady very much struggling under pressure. And we talk about how that is, that fluctuates a lot. And I could see that regressing a little bit towards the mean, back up towards the mean, especially because they've had a couple of weeks to figure it out. And my big thing is he's always been a guy that needs to trust where he's going with the ball. And you can see right now, Bruce talked about this a little bit, like the trust just isn't there.
Well, and the Vikings don't have a pass rush to save their life. So that's like...
Yeah, passing under pressure only matters when you're under pressure.
Yeah. So that would be my biggest concern, is I don't think Minnesota actually has the pass rush to make this thing work. And that's partially why, when you look at all the numbers, it might shake out in Minnesota's favor. But one of the reasons I would lay off the game is maybe that the Vikings defense... So when you look at Minnesota, and I give their fans a ton of shit because I think that they're over.
What you do.
But the last 3 games, the Vikings have played 3 home games in a row. They won by a combined 1 point, and the combined record of those 3 teams was 8-28. They were 0-3 against the spread. There was just the reason why we have them still as underdogs to make the playoffs behind Arizona. Like, this isn't a good football team, and Tampa Bay, for all their faults, is a good football team. So going on the road, Tampa off a bye, that's baked into the number, though, and it has been overly so for decades. That's really where I I talk myself in and out of this.
There's a lot of projection in this number, which is like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have to put it together at some point. Why not now, coming off of a bye? That being said, we've talked about how much we hate Kirk Cousins and the Vikings as big favorites, but as decently sized underdogs, they're the type of team that you want having to come through the back door. They're not the type of team that I want holding a lead. Why? Because they get in this run game, infatuations, but they do have the horses to put up points. Like Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Irv Smith, like they start passing the ball. Kirk Cousins is accurate. Like all of those things, if they're down 14 in the fourth quarter, I'm not terrified. I don't know.
That being said, though, there's one thing I'm a little worried about with that.
Only one.
The Vikings don't have that many weapons. They have good weapons. And the Bucs, I think, they struggle against teams with a lot of weapons, but not necessarily teams with really good. Like Carlton Davis is a pretty good corner. Antoine Winfield Jr. is pretty solid. that might be the thing that sort of like keeps
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let me give you. I got like a lot of different things here, but let's go to Sunday night. Buffalo -2.5 at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are reeling. I mean, it's tough to watch.
Yeah, you really hate seeing it.
My heart, it pours, it breaks for all of the Steelers fans who don't deserve this. They don't. They're good people. They have respect for all.
Yeah.
They're loving. They're charitable. They're
not like
this.
Giants fans, for example.
No, or Packers fans, or
Giants fans who have been the bane of our existence since.
Or Bears fans. The Steelers fans are good people. When I came out and I talked about how the Pittsburgh Steelers are the most overrated team in the NFL, and I cited a bunch of mathematical reasoning, I can't tell you how many Steelers fans came into my mentions and said, I agree with you.
Yeah, it makes sense, George.
Thank you for your sound reasoning. And so I hate to see this happen to the Steelers.
It does suck. By the way, who picked the spread of this game kind of spot on Sunday?
Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, the better team, the better quarterback, better all the way around, really.
Better. Is this blaspheme? But I think Sean McDermott's the best coach.
He is the better in-game coach.
Yeah, Tomlin.
I still think Tomlin's
a Hall of Fame coach.
Tomlin is like the CEO that I want, right? But in game, I know that the Buffalo Bills are going to make strategic decisions that make the most sense. Whereas the Pittsburgh Steelers repeatedly decided to ram some no-name running back into the defensive line for no reason. Well, the reason was probably because Big Ben can't really throw the ball down the football field, so they had to do something. But neither here nor there.
Of course.
The Buffalo Bills only being favored by 2.5 points at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Buffalo Bills are a much better team.
Yeah. I would take this all the way up to 2.5. Last week, we also took the Bills as our lock of the week. We've won 2 in a row, gotten off the schneid.
Great job by you.
Look.
Talk me into that one. In fairness, though, we were deciding between the Rams and the
we both like the Rams
yeah.
equally well. Both good matchups for the teams. I mean, the 49ers, I think, are a team that can beat certain teams, and this is what I'm going to bring this last one up, I think. Yeah, I think that's the last one we really like. The Washington football team plus 3.5 in an Alex Smith revenge game at Niners. Man. Nick Mullins against...
Man. I just thought that game that the football team won was so much more about Pittsburgh than it was about Washington.
Yeah, I know.
What did Washington do where you were like, man, that's impressive?
Well, we backed Washington on the road against Arizona week 2. We backed them on the road against the Cleveland Browns in week 3. And why did they lose? Well, they lost because Dwayne Haskins was producing 22% of his plays were negatively graded.
Yeah, he wasn't very good.
Alex Smith, only 9% of his passes were negatively graded. Now, only 12% are positively graded. His ADOT is like 5.
Look, you can't go negative or positive when you can't get it positively down the football field.
His ADOT is like Cole Beasley's height, So it's not, but...
What's that, 1.5 yards?
Yeah. But I do think there is something to the fact that he really does control the football game.
Cole Beasley, amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
Dude's
top
awesome.
10 in PFF WAR by wide receivers.
For the listeners out there that want to laugh, go YouTube Cole Beasley freestyle.
Yeah, we've liked Beasley in WAR for a long time.
Have you seen Cole Beasley rap?
Mm-mm.
Oh, well, the real Cole Beasley, please stand up.
He does have that like swag to him.
Mm-hmm. I am nervous about this game, and here's why I'm nervous about this game. You think it's an Alex Smith revenge game, and it is, but it's also a little Kyle Shanahan revenge game.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. And a little bit of Kyle and Mike Shanahan.
That's right, because he failed in Washington.
And Kyle Shanahan, it was interesting listening to Richard Sherman. So Richard and Chris get on to do their podcast, and Chris's first question is like, "What's it like being in Arizona with this stuff?" And I'm expecting Richard to just tear into him, right? Richard goes, "You know what? It's kind of cool. Restaurants are better. We're playing football. Weather's nice.
Northern Cal this time of year, not like super warm, right?
It's cold. And he goes, if you have a family, you can rent an Airbnb and bring them out here. My family's in Seattle anyways, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. And they lost to a really good Bills team. The Bills are a very good team. I've said it already. I think they're the second best AFC team.
Yeah.
The Washington football team is getting uplifted similarly to the way the New York Giants are.
Sure, but the New York Giants are too. The New York Giant. That's true, but here's my thing. Washington actually is.
You're buying the football team at the top of the market and selling Kyle freaking Shanahan.
Okay, well, we won't do it. We won't do it.
We can't go against the Niners twice in a row.
The thing about
you're tempting
the thing
fate.
that I struggled with in Monday Night Football was the Niners actually played pretty well.
But how different? Alex Smith is the opposite of Josh Allen. The opposite.
Probably true.
The Niners defense is so thankful that Alex Smith is coming to town.
That's true. They can keep everything in front of them.
Okay, let me give you a teaser. You ready?
Uh-oh.
The Kansas City Chiefs.
I'm already in. -1.
Tease down to -1 against the Miami Dolphins.
Okay.
Along with, and I actually have a couple options for you.
Okay. Should we just do 2? We've done 2 before.
We have. But I want to see which one is your favorite. Okay, I have a little menu of items. The Tennessee Titans. Tease down to
2 road favorites, by the way. A lot of road favorites.
A lot of road favorites this week. The Green Bay Packers, not really a road favorite because they're playing in Aaron Rodgers' vacation home in Detroit.
Can you imagine?
No, I can't.
UP is nice, but every other part of Michigan.
Well, look, I live on the banks of the Ohio River, so I have pretty high standards.
No judgment.
No judgment here. Tease down to 1.5. The Los Angeles Chargers. Teased up to 8.5. That's I'm just mentioning. I'm just throwing it out there. And then one that is just for you, buddy, because we had the Jalen Hurts argument.
New Orleans Saints
the New Orleans Saints down to -1.
I don't know. I mean, the Saints defense. I go on with Bobby Hebert every week, and every single week he talks about the Saints defense, and
that must be a hell of a show.
It's like their defense has a lot of good players. I think it's going to be really hard for Philadelphia to win this game.
Can you imagine if they had a reunion with Greg Williams?
Brett Favre's ankle would never survive. It's just
do any of those teasers interest you? Because you could make the case.
Go ahead.
You can make the case that Kansas City, just -7, but
no. There's not it's tough. If 6.5, I'd do it. But
there are a few teaser legs I have liked as much.
What about Tampa? So we just talked about we like Minnesota, but what about Tampa -1.5? It's a one home team that we like in that situation. I mean, I'm content. What if we did Kansas City -1, Green Bay -1.5, the 2 MVP candidates on the road, but against teams that I think can't really compete with them? It seems like
it's too easy.
It's too easy. All right.
I brought this one up to Chris, and he goes, "It's too easy." I don't know.
Well, it seems. It looks.
Are there any
like
other
a
sides or
situation
totals that you like?
Well, if you're just going to bet, so here's another thing we talked about this last week. Like a place like Canby, right? So Hollywood Casino, for example, props are -112. Teasers, 6-point NFL teasers are -150. Some books, like my book, is -120. You can make up that. If you don't have teasers available to you, don't bet this. Or if the teaser's -1, we're not giving this out at -150. Just that we don't want that.
Don't do that.
If you need a bet that is -110, I think the best one of the week is probably Houston -1.
I am with you.
So I don't know if we make 2 of them. We go, look, the 3 best quarterbacks in the fucking NFL laying a point.
What are we doing?
All 3 of them, let's do it.
Why not?
All right, let's do it.
Welcome Christmas. You're unwrapping presents with your kids tomorrow. I mean, why would I not give you a gift?
Okay, so Houston -1 is one in the picks, and then Kansas City -1 teased with
the Aaron Rodgers revenge stomping.
So basically, look, the points don't even matter. It's just like whose line is it anyway? At this point,
who needs points? All I care about is rushing attempts, Eric. That's what I'm here for.
Can you imagine the disdain that I had?
I can imagine, actually. I'll give you one more that I like a little bit. I want to get your take on this. Dallas, Cincinnati over 42.5.
No.
Hold on. Really low total. The weather's actually going to be nice here. Not a primetime game. The Cincinnati Bunkholes have no defense.
Yeah. Neither does Dallas, really.
Neither does Dallas.
But so here's the question. I was talking to Ross today, Tucker, great guy.
Our friend.
And I was like, the Cowboys have not looked bad in 3 games. It's weird. Like, did Dalton look terrible last night?
He didn't look as terrible as I thought he would.
No. Like, did he look bad on Christmas? Or sorry, not Christmas, on Thanksgiving? They moved the ball. He had a couple kind of shitty plays, right? Like, he had the Montez Sweat at the end when they're trying to come back. But he didn't look like
it wasn't the primetime Dalton that
he
you
looked
have
awful
come to know
against
about.
Arizona. Like, you can't play this guy awful. And then against Washington the next week before he got knocked out, he looked dreadful. Against Minnesota, won the game on the road against supposedly a playoff team now. And then 2 straight games they've lost and they haven't covered. But Dalton hasn't been the problem, really.
No, the problem is that
Zeke fumbling, or last night's game, their kicker, they cover the number if their kicker makes field goals last night.
I know.
And their defense is just, dude, like, I'm sorry, Steve Palazzolo could set a better edge than their
How is
guys.
Greg Williams fired, but Mike Nolan still has a job?
Dude, I don't know. It's the hard part about McCarthy is obviously, you want him to do well, but he's made some decisions that I think, as far as personnel, both on offense, both players-wise and coaching-wise, that I think he's going to have to correct for him to have success in this, coming little bit here.
Notice we did not talk about the Falcons. We resisted the urge. I'm not going to advise you.
We faded the Falcons last week, and it worked out.
It worked, yeah. Because the Saints and Sean Payton, a juggernaut. If you had to bet one side of Saints, Eagles +7 with Jalen Hurts.
I think Philly +7's the only spot you can take, because I don't think that.
Doesn't look like
there's too much unknown, and I don't think Taysom Hill can extend a game. Like last week, they had a double-digit lead, and then Hill fumbled it away. He almost fumbled on the penultimate drive that would have given them, prime field position. So, no, I don't want to bet this game, but if I had to, I'd probably take the points with Philly and Jalen Hurts.
Unlike you, I really want to bet that game, but I'm going to try not to, because I've already staked my claim with you on Sunday night.
That he's going to be great?
That he's going to be great. Okay, we're going to get to Soren, lock of the week, a bunch of games this week to enjoy. You and I, Saturday night, PFF Daily Betting Podcast. If you don't want to listen to this whole long thing every week.
Hopefully we have as good of a sweat on the college games as we had last week.
I doubt that's going to be the case.
Yeah, well,
there was a hell of a sweat. Our guy Ben Brown with a DFS win that maybe will take us to Christmas, to Vegas for Christmas. Who knows?
We'll see.
Just saying. All right, Soren Petro, here he is. It has been far too long since we last had our good friend Soren Petro, host of the program, Sports Radio 810 in Kansas City, but that is really not doing him justice. I would say there's Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, just a hair, just maybe a hair.
Do we have to claim him in Cincinnati to move Petro up?
Maybe. But then it's Soren Petro.
It is Soren Petro.
That's how I view the hierarchy in Kansas City.
Yeah. Well, Bill Self is on line 1.
No.
He's got something to say, as do about 200 other people. So, but you're too kind, George. I'll take it.
Eric introduced me to you and the great program that you have, and the best part about you do a bunch of radio hits, and I go on radio hits all the time, and oftentimes it's like, okay, here's 3 questions, 4 questions, whatever, and there's never any dialogue, never back and forth. Every time I go on with Soren, I know that I'm gonna have a good conversation. Very rarely do you feel that way.
Yeah, there's the challenging aspect to it. I grew up listening to sports talk radio. I remember Bill Walton.
The 60s? When was that?
Yeah, exactly. So growing up in the Twin Cities, there was a guy named Dan Barrero in Minneapolis. So you probably have heard of him, right? And Bill Walton came on once and told Dan he was his guiding light, his shining star. And being a Chiefs fan, later in life, I've been a Chiefs fan for like 10 years. I've mostly only experienced like fun things about being a Chiefs fan. Like they've been mostly good the whole time. Petro will challenge me on my like weaknesses in being a Chiefs fan, the blind spots that I have. And I think that's especially good now in a time when the Kansas City Chiefs are 11-1. They're tied for the best record in the NFL. They're just coming off of a Super Bowl. They have the best player in the NFL. And yet, like, I'm positive. Like, I haven't been nervous, Soren, about a Chiefs game since they played Baltimore.
I can attest.
No.
I haven't the other night.
There's a lot of dancing, a lot of fist pumping.
We watch the games together while we help. But there's
a lot of driving to other states to get more money down.
Which has not worked actually the last like 3-4 weeks. Although I'll never place a bet the size I placed on Kansas City plus 3.5 in Baltimore. But the last few weeks have not been profitable, Soren. And I wonder, like, what is your take on the state of the team right now?
I think I was on in Miami and I got asked kind of a question like, how are they better? How are they worse? What are the pitfalls? And I said, they have played some close games, some games that you thought, okay, like they should just hammer the Broncos, right? Even though they won easy before, even if they do just throw their helmets out on the field and say, yeah, we got this, coach. Yeah. Like that's a syndrome that I think all teams have to fight their way through. You'd think they would be good enough. I think there are a couple of things that work. One, like the Chiefs, and again, I pointed out my first time covering a defending NFL champion, right? So this is, rookie water for me and how you go about defending a Super Bowl. But one, I think there is something to that, getting everybody's best game, right? Maybe the Chiefs are exactly what they were last year, but this is what it looks like when everybody else now steps their game up a notch and you're getting their best game. Two, I'll go back to something we talked about before that, everybody loves the fact that almost everybody's back on this team. And we talked about that. If they don't repeat, and they're well on their way to at least having a very good chance at it, but if they don't repeat, maybe we'll look back and say, look, the 6 to 8 guys that get turned over usually by most teams that go to back-to-back Super Bowls, which the Chiefs don't have, and they added Stefan Wisniewski back to the mix, so even one of those guys is back on the roster. Maybe that's a missing ingredient. Maybe having 25% of your core guys, 25% of your starters be hungry is something that teams need to achieve that same level of greatness. And so I think in reality, we're seeing a little bit of it all. I think there is maybe a regression back to the mean, as you guys like to talk about, on the defensive side of the ball, that maybe the defense played a little bit over its head in that stretch run, and now they're being exposed a little bit. But I think there are a lot of factors. And I think also, they know that ultimately the success of this season is going to be measured exclusively on being in the postseason. They got to the postseason. They've known they were going to be in the postseason for quite a while. The AFC West has been virtually locked up for 3 weeks, right? Or at least since the Raider game, they officially finished it off. And so maybe there is a little bit of cruise control. I think all those things are probably swirling in there, right? It's never just one villain. Sports fans are always looking for just one thing. If we fix that one thing, then it'll all be perfect. And reality is it's never that simple.
We talk a lot about basketball on Soren's show because he's a man of many talents.
And I learned on the forecast the other day, you're a former AAU superstar.
Yeah, superstar is definitely the word I would use. Glue guy.
George is like a cross between Steve Nash.
Oh God.
And like Courtney Vandersloot.
That
like kind of an in between.
What you're really
like
describing,
Courtney Vandersloot's like my favorite WNBA player.
What you're really describing is Jason Williams.
Yeah.
Which one though? Jay Williams or White Chocolate?
White Chocolate was
ball hog turnover machine, or
White Chocolate.
Who was number 1 overall pick? Career ended by injury.
Who is that? Who is that college player that was the same? Like,
oh, you're thinking of those two. I even had another Jason Williams, far less of a.
The one who died?
I don't know. No,
New
you're
Jersey
thinking of the guy that played with
forward?
Randy Moss in high school, right?
Yes, I'm thinking of White Chocolate, the one that went to Marshall. Yeah, I'm not thinking of Jason Williams' current ESPN personality, or Jason Williams, former Nets player.
By the way, growing up in Minnesota and watching the Timberwolves draft Jason Williams backup, like top 10, was just one. That was like not even top 100 terrible decision by them.
My personal favorite is Indy Eby.
Oh, I think it wasn't the under the table Joe Smith contract that cost him 5 first-round picks.
This is devolving, but there was a point to this. In the NBA, so the Bulls had this with Jordan and Pippen. We talked a lot about this with LeBron and the Cavs. And it's like, all right, just make it to the playoffs. Because once you're in the playoffs, you got 7 games. No one is beating LeBron or beating Jordan in 7 games. Now, my thought is, that makes sense because Patrick Mahomes is that type of player.
Right.
Can that happen in football, though? Because you don't get 7 games. You get 1. And you also, now in the playoffs, only one team gets home field. Is that something that this Chiefs team could do?
I think, and I love the point because I think it is similar. Like, if you go back to the Jimmy Johnson Cowboys, right, that probably had the best team for 4 years. And the 49ers, actually ended up getting busted for violating the salary cap and added free agents. And they were able to get them once, right? And the Bills couldn't get them in there. And the Bills were a really good team. And there was one time that the Cowboys came out, and I think they fumbled a kick return, and then they had a fumble on a reception. They dug a hole, and they were down 14-0 in San Francisco and couldn't get back on top. And so, I think that's kind of in a one-time elimination tournament, that can happen to you. And I think, the Chiefs are the closest thing because Patrick Mahomes is the closest thing to Michael Jordan, right? Like they have inefficiencies, and I've heard you guys talk about it. Like maybe they're not so good guard, center, guard, but Patrick Mahomes can evade and get out and escape and eliminate that part of the equation and extend the play and do those kind of things. And I think, going back to the question I got in Miami today about like, where are the Chiefs better? They're better at quarterback. Mahomes is playing better. And I think they're so good now that, to beat the Chiefs, the recipe is, first of all, the Chiefs have lost 9 times with Patrick Mahomes. 8 times the opposition scored 31 points, so you're going to have to score. And the one loss they have this year, the Raiders got them down and kept putting them down, right? They didn't start leaning for the tape the way Anthony Lynn did in the second week of the season by not going for it on 4th and 2 at his 50 and punting the ball back to Patrick Mahomes and saying, I'm going to let my defense win it. We're going to pin him down. The Raiders got the Chiefs down. Chiefs scored to cut it from 16-8. They got the 2-point conversion. And the Raiders, in trying to kill the clock, went for it on 4th down. They said, we're not going to give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. So, to beat the Chiefs, you're going to have to be up by multiple scores late. You can't give the ball back to Mahomes with just one drive being what can kill you or tie you, because once Andy Reid, adds on the 4th down, across the board, to this point, no one's been able to stop Patrick Mahomes when he uses all 4 downs.
Poisonous ketchup.
From that standpoint, he is Jordan-esque.
You bring up such a great point about the Dallas Cowboys. I just finished reading Boys Will Be Boys by Perlman. And what was crazy about that team, it was very Chiefsian in the way it happened, right? They were 1-15 in 1989, much like the Chiefs were 2-14 in 2012, and they sort of built the team up, right? They built the team up, made some ballsy decisions, drafting 2 quarterbacks in the first round, was crazy. But then the thing that was interesting about that team was the 92 team was the best. The 93 team was a little worse, still won the Super Bowl. The 94 team was worse, and to your point, they got behind 21-0 to San Francisco in Candlestick, within the first 5 minutes or so, and still only lost that game by 10, and probably would have at least gotten a chance if they would have called Deion Sanders for pass interference. And then, and Barry Switzer's only Super Bowl, they were even worse. But the whole league around it, they had expansion that year, so there was diluting of talent and all that. So they won a Super Bowl, and then, of course, the wheels fall off. The Kansas City Chiefs currently have not gotten worse from 2019 to 2020. I think that's where they buck that Cowboys trend. And I also don't see a situation where the power structure in Kansas City is so much different than it was in Dallas, right? Because Jimmy Johnson wanted some of the credit and Jerry Jones would give him nothing. Whereas right now, Andy Reid and Mahomes are very in lockstep. I think about the brilliance of the two of them. I do worry a little bit about getting caught off guard. But the one thing that I'll say, and again, this is just me being positive about the Chiefs, Reid puts on some sort of God mode hat when they get behind. To Soren's point, they start using every down, they start using all the plays. I mean, it was almost good for them to be behind, by what they were behind by in some of those games, because he never relented. I mean, they've.
I was actually going to say about the Raiders game. When I rewatched that game, I was shocked that the Chiefs were up
14-3.
And I was like, actually, maybe this is it.
Yeah.
If you get up 14-0 on the Chiefs, may God help you.
Yeah.
But if you get up on them, maybe you've got a shot because Andy Reid's like, I won't waste any plays. I'll run the ball.
Carolina got up on them 14-3. And now they didn't cover the number or whatever, but they won that game more or less comfortably. They had that field goal at the end, which, there was a little bit of a scare. The Denver game, you never really got the thinking that they were going to lose that game. The Raiders game, we all sort of watched that and thinking, okay, all they really need to get is one stop all game because Mahomes is and it is crazy. I do agree that obviously they're that kind of brings us to our first question. Like, what team is going to be the team that knocks them off if they don't win the Super Bowl?
Finish this sentence. You can, however you want.
Okay.
The Chiefs' biggest competition to winning the Super Bowl this year is blank.
I mean, I know it's cliched to say themselves, right? Like, for all the reasons we put forward, but I think in some ways, turning the ball over, right? That's it. So, like, I know what you want is you want a team. And I'll take the Tennessee Titans, right? It's either the Raiders or it's the Titans in my book. I think the Steelers are a bad matchup because they know only one way on defense. They're going to blitz, and Mahomes is going to destroy them.
And they suck.
And I think the tables have really turned between the Chiefs and Steelers. Alex Smith and the Chiefs, that version of the Chiefs went up against the Steelers. They couldn't get over the hump. Yeah. Even if the Steelers didn't score a touchdown, they'd win 18-16, right, in Arrowhead after the Chiefs had a bye week. And so I think the tables have turned. The Chiefs are now the absolute kryptonite to the way that the Steelers and Ravens want to play that attacking style defense. So I know it'll upset people in Pittsburgh, and I respect that opinion if the Steelers roll the Chiefs.
Don't worry.
Steeler fans will have the last laugh. But I don't think it's it. I mean, I think there is a scenario where the Titans, get, the Cowboys 49ers game happens and the Chiefs turn the ball over two times. And, and it's the first one comes after being already down 7-0. And it gets to 14 and it gets to 21-0. And they're digging out and they make them fight. But that Mike Vrabel is a good enough coach that he recognizes I can't just lean on the running back all day and I've got to keep spinning it. And they never just go one-dimensional and try to just pound the rock. They still have a healthy dose of the running game, but they keep firing to keep putting points on the board. And so I think the Titans are scary. And I do think there's something wrong with the matchup with the Raiders, right? The Raiders are kind of that styles make fights, the adage that you hear in boxing. Like, one guy might have 5 losses, the other guy might be undefeated, but for whatever reason, he's constantly stepping on his toe. He's got this up and under move, or the headbutt's bothering him, or whatever it is. And that guy who's an inferior fighter against everyone else that the two of them might fight has got the problems to what this guy is. I think the Raiders' offensive line has exposed the Chiefs' lack of pass rush, right? And if there's a place where they're not better, right, or not as good, it's their pass rush. Mm-hmm. And, they've been able to, cover that up with good safety play, although Juan Thornhill has been in a doghouse for the team after getting off to a good start. But with good safety play, and then 4, to your guys' point, I know you make this point all the time, and I think it makes perfect sense, no weak links in that secondary, right? 4 corners that are all number 2, number 3 corners, right? Mm-hmm. None of them are 5s, none of them are 6s. They're all in that no worse than being a number 3 corner. You look at the PFF grades, you guys put them all 20-something to 40-something, right? If there's 32 number 1 corners and 64, and another 32 number 2 corners, then theoretically they have nothing but number 2s, right? And so while they don't have a Darrelle Revis that they can say, take this guy out of the mix, they got 4 guys and there's no weak links. And so, if they get any pass rush, their defense should start to look like it did over the last 9 games, last 6 regular season games and 3 postseason games.
Nothing.
But it hasn't been there. And you guys, I've had to come around and bow to your greatness on Frank Clark, right? He has not been the shark this year. Yep. And he's been very blockable of late. And if they don't pressure, then even a good secondary will eventually get exposed. So, they've done a lot of things right. But the Raiders, for whatever reason, can block everything. And they make plays down the field, and they can put points on the board. They're the one team that seems to be able to go up and down the field on the Chiefs, even if they can't do it against other teams.
Well, nothing but number 2s. Odell Beckham Jr., very jealous. Go ahead.
Jesus. Oh, man.
Hey, wait a minute. By the way, is this when the professional What was the quote? Professional expectation manager comes in to set the stage. By the way, how you will be billed here? No longer a data scientist. You will be professional expectation manager.
There's like numerous people who have found that hilarious. Like, so they were like rolling around in their chair laughing at that segment. But who
do you think it is?
What do you mean?
The biggest competition to the Chiefs.
It's nobody with hobo quarterbacks, if I'm going to quote one of George's best.
It's New Orleans.
Journeyman.
It's New Orleans.
Journeyman hobos. You called them hobos, didn't you? Journeyman hobo quarterback.
It's New Orleans.
Don't talk about Whitlock.
And my issue. So Soren, you brought up a great point about 2 months ago when they faced the New England Patriots with Brian Hoyer. They let the Patriots run for 185 on them. And they lulled that offense into this false sense of a lack of urgency, right? Like Drew Lock throws a touchdown pass and he's doing this thing to his hometown, and I get he's having fun. But like they clearly didn't understand the urgency on offense they needed. Last week, the exact same thing happened to Denver. They gave up 179 on the ground. It didn't look pretty. Some of that was on one run, granted, but that distribution, I think, is always going to favor Kansas City. This one where the other team thinks they lull themselves into this idea of being in the game physically, right? And then Kansas City just hits them with, obviously, their player, their speed on the outside, but also their sharpness of their coaches. What I found was interesting is in like the Raiders game, they gave up, 275 through the air, 89 on the ground. It was the urgency that the Raiders had was immense. And to your point about Tennessee was controlling that game in the AFC title game. And what happened was the Chiefs scored a touchdown to Tyreek Hill, and the Tennessee Titans to end the half went run, screen to Deion Lewis, punt. Perfect. And the game was over. And like to beat Kansas City, you have to play the way the Raiders did. And I think that's what the matchup is Gruden sort of knows he can't give any fucks in that game. Like, if you lose to the Chiefs, it's who cares? Everybody loses.
If you lose by 40,
who cares? There's no admirable thing about losing by a little bit, right? What you want to do is beat them. And they played that game, to your point, Soren, in Arrowhead to beat the Chiefs. If they would have missed that fourth down, they're going to come back and lose, but that was the expected outcome. And I think that's how. So when I look at the rest of the NFL, you have to think of teams that actually think that way. And again,
Sean Payton's
a guy who thinks that way. He doesn't have the quarterback yet, but Kevin Stefanski thinks that way. Frank Reich thinks that way. And the problem is when you look at trying to handicap other teams being able to beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, there aren't coaches who think that way that have that quarterback except for maybe the Saints.
I'll give you one.
The
Bills.
Yes.
I think the Bills, now, whether Josh Allen, you need to catch Josh Allen on a good day, certainly, because he's very volatile. But on a good day, he is accurate enough, he's shown this year, and their coaches certainly feel that way. They've been one of the most pass-heavy teams on early downs. They have Stephon Diggs, who's really good. That would be one more that I'd throw in there.
Yeah, I called the Bills, I can't remember what show it was, I called them Dollar Store Chiefs because they kind of have the same defense. They play the 4-3. They give up a decent amount of run. They're not brilliant. Tre'Davious White's really good, but they're not like brilliant anywhere on defense. They don't get a good pass rush. And on offense, the highs for Josh Allen are really high. Like they're in that they're close, right? The lows are dark though. and Mahomes just simply doesn't have those lows ever in his game.
No, but I mean, have a day, right? Like Nick Foles had a quarter of a season and they won a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
If you've got that kind of ability and you can be high, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he looks like a hero for 3 games, right? So on any one given day, he can throw for 6 touchdowns on you. So yeah, I think all those are. I mean, listen, it's the NFL. There's a reason why, and if you have the quarterback and you can score points, and you just hit on some of the teams that can, that's it. I've always wondered, being a casual fan of math, not the nerds that you guys are, right? But I've never understood why coaches didn't keep scoring until they thought they had more touchdowns or a lead, that there was more than 8 points times however many possessions were left for the other team.
Well,
right? And it's always been like this coaches fraternity kicks in. Like at 17, you got to kind of ease off. And if you don't end up winning, you just say, hey, listen, like kind of the stupid thing I heard from Mike Tomlin, and I love Mike Tomlin. I think he's fantastic, but in this game that we play, if you can't get a yard, you don't deserve to win. Mm-hmm. No,
that's not the game. That's not the objective function. The objective function is to win. You're right.
Score more points. Like that's the objective of the game.
Yeah,
That's that mentality that takes you back to this old school Cro-Magnon style football where you have to somehow physically abuse your opponents. That is something that just is not a reality, that you should not be thinking that way. And so for me, I think the reality is they're not going to, the team that's going to have to beat the Chiefs is the one that says, we're going to keep being aggressive. We're going to keep putting out, 7 points, every single time down the field until they just absolutely can't catch up to us. Right. And I think that's got to be the mindset. And the Raiders, to their credit, in icing the game with the 4-minute offense, they threw a couple of times, right? They went for it on a 4th down in the win in Kansas City in their 4-minute offense. They didn't go, oh, we got a punt. They stayed aggressive. And eventually that's how this game is going to be played by everybody because, whoever the best is just moves the bar, and there'll be guys that come along behind Mahomes and have his abilities, and you're going to have to play this game to beat any good team at some point. It's definitely how you have to play it to beat the Chiefs.
The smartest poker players, right? They don't try to win hands, right? Eventually they get to the point where they get to a fold out situation where not only have they won the tournament, they've won the tournament if they can fold on every hand,
right?
They're on out, right? And that's really kind of like what you want to be thinking about, right? You don't want to necessarily always be thinking about, okay, we need to get this next touchdown, or we need to get this next, we need to get this 1 yard, right? Like you said, it's so many teams are playing for trophies that don't matter.
Don't exist. They don't exist.
Hey guys, we drafted a Chase Young. Well, Chase Young's awesome. Are you going to make the playoffs, or are you going to win a Super Bowl?
The football team, clearly Super Bowl contenders.
The thing about it is, and that's again, this is where I'll defend Frank Clark's sort of mentality on this, when people are like, you're not getting the sacks, and he's like, well, we're still winning football games. I do think that that's an important thing. If Frank Clark sucks the rest of the year, and they still win the Super Bowl, it wasn't a great trade, but at the end of the day, the point of anything the Chiefs do is to win the Super Bowl. And you're going to, just like in sports betting, you're going to have wins and you're going to have losses. And if you can get to, 52.38, you're doing well, right? And that's, I do think that's the mindset. If Frank Clark tries to start playing for sacks, he might make the defense worse in a way, because he might not be containing the quarterback or setting the edge or anything. So I do like the fact that this team does seem singularly focused on winning another Super Bowl, which is important.
Yeah.
And let me say this too. I think one of the things, and you talk about the team building aspect, and you talk about Frank Clark, and I was a guy, I wouldn't have done that trade, right? I don't hate it. I knew what they were trying to do. He sets an edge way better than D Ford. So whatever's he gave up a first and a second. Yeah, but they got a second for D Ford. So in their mind, it was a year that they didn't love the pass rushers, and they gave up a first round pick to get Frank Clark, right? And do they take on some water on that? Yeah, right? The boat's taking on water right now with the Frank Clark deal. Big cap number, a lot of picks. Montez Sweat was a couple of picks in front of them in that draft they could have taken. And here's one that doesn't get talked about. Speaking of this week's game against the Dolphins, they signed Emmanuel Ogbah, or traded for him. I think it was was it Eric Murray? Mm-hmm. Our guy that, another Charvarius Ward, when they traded Parker Anger for Charvarius Ward. It was into camp, and they go get Emmanuel Ogbah, and it was kind of our guy that we don't want for your guy that you don't want. And Ogbah comes in, and he gets 5 or 5.5 sacks for the Chiefs in 10 games, gets hurt, isn't seen in their stretch run, right, where they play great football and isn't in the playoffs. Get to the end of the year, they let him go to the Dolphins, 3 years, $21 million. Everyone's going, well, what's that all about? Lo and behold, he has 8 sacks right now in 12 games, right? So he's doing really well. They signed him and traded for Frank Clark, right? So they wanted to get better against the pass rush. They already had Chris Jones. They knew D Ford was a one-trick pony. We got to get better all around. And so they doubled down, 2 different acquisitions. Now, you could play a scenario where maybe you could have found the right pass rusher, or got better in the secondary, or signed linebackers, or signed another defensive lineman if you don't have all that money tied up in Frank Clark. But the bottom line is they identified a problem, and they threw resources at it. And ultimately, they won the Super Bowl. Now, maybe they don't win a second, a third, a fourth, because of that, because they've got all these cap issues and Frank Clark being the biggest one right now, maybe that doesn't happen. But any championship plan that begins with we can have no one get hurt and everybody has to play to exactly the level we think they can play to, you're already doomed. You have to be able to take on water. You have to be able to lose people along the way and still be good enough to be a championship team. And that's what the Frank Clark trade was all about.
$20 million a year of leadership and continuity.
Yeah. But that's partially why. So I know I listened to your show, Soren, and I was on and I talked about my worry for the Chiefs defense was a 5 out of 10. Adam Teicher writes for ESPN, said it was a 7 out of 10 and had a big soliloquy about how much defense matters and how it carried the Chiefs last year and all this kind of stuff.
Really?
Which, okay, but here's my thing. How worried?
Wait, can I add one more guy?
Yeah.
Corey Anderson, who does middays on my station. They heard that segment that you did, and so they talked about it the next day. And he goes, let me tell you something. 0 out of 10 is my concern on defense. I've listened to the defense doesn't matter thing from these guys, and I'm 100% bought in. So don't tell me 5. He was pissed at you. He goes, defense doesn't matter. 0 out of 10 was what he
nice.
what his concern
I love the influence we're having on the Kansas City radio market. But how concerned can you be in this defense when it's basically the exact same players? Right? It's the exact 18 is different, right? 18 they had the dead career walking of Bob Sutton. They tried to sign David Amerson to play corner, and he sucked. And then so they went with Orlando Skandrick, who had as many NFL jobs as I did at the time. And then Anthony Hitchens, D Ford can't stop the run to save his life. Justin Houston's kind of checked out. There was a lot of fundamental reasons why that defense wasn't going to be very good. This defense has the exact same players as last year, give or take a couple. In fact, I think they've upgraded at some spots with L'Jarius Sneed over Kendall Fuller is at least the same. And so my concern is, okay, if Spags is able to coach them up last year and play well down the stretch, what's to say he can't do it? Is there, and none of these guys are hurt.
There's nothing.
It's just defense, right? It's the same thing with the Saints.
The problem, though, is not this year. It's what are you doing? Frank Clark is one of the 5-6 highest paid edge defenders, and he's one of the 95 best.
Yeah.
That's
91, I think you guys have him at right now, I was looking at.
So it's not about this year. My level of concern this year is 0. But from a team building perspective, that's why you go, oh, well, we have to bring everyone back to try and win the Super Bowl next year. Well, why? Why do you have to, why would you not do things that make it possible for you to win the Super Bowl next year, but also make it more probable that you can win it 2 years from now?
But do you think they saw this season and said, and it's basically played out this way, there's so much noise going to happen in the NFL this year because look at the Ravens. We talk about this all the time. The Ravens are the most fragile team in the NFL. Their offense is like a defense because you need all the constituent pieces to be good just for it to work. The Steelers are sort of similar, right? If Big Ben relies on his support so much that when they screw his ass over for 2 straight games, they almost lose to RG3 and then lose to Alex Smith. Every team in the NFL is like that except for the Chiefs, and I think they viewed this as, okay, if they err in a couple ways, it doesn't really matter because they have this trump card right now, and they still have him relatively cheaply. And so when you look at it, our power rankings, Chiefs are 10.7 points better than anybody else. The next best team is New Orleans at 7.7, and that's with Drew Brees, who might not come back, right? So I think they made a bet about this particular year that I think was correct.
But you could have made that same projection without Frank Clark.
But that's where the conversations get tangled because the conversation
it's about Chris Jones, right?
It's about 19 and everyone's frustration with the plan, or excuse me, it's about 2020 and everyone's frustration with the plan for 20 is the move they made in 19. And once you make that move, you can't unwind.
You can't really.
That's why I say, we talked today. I said, we've talked a lot. It came down and we had a lot of discussions about Chris Jones, right? Do you give him the money? And everyone in Kansas City is no, get rid of Frank Clark, but keep Chris Jones. That can't happen.
You can't do that.
Right? He's a $59 million cap hit. Once you make that move, that's a 3-year commitment. You're married. There's no going anywhere. And so there are a lot of us that would say, hey, no, stay cap flexible. And I said, well, what if you kept Agba and you get rid of Chris Jones and then you have the 2 DNs? Because Okafor and Tano Pascal provide nothing when it comes to pass rush. So maybe Frank Clark would be better if you had another guy on the edge that could really get after the quarterback. And maybe that's better. And, we talked about it last year, 2 fatties and a blitz on the inside, right? Put your 2 run-stuffing defensive tackles in the middle, those 2 guys on the edge, blitz 1 guy here and there every now and then, and maybe you'd be a better defense. And universally, where the conversation always goes is, well, you signed Ogba when you traded for Clark. How about just sign Ogba, draft a guy, sign another guy with the other $13 million, or really the $18 million you had to spend in that first year, and you can have a better team. And that's great with the power of hindsight, and that's great if you have the confidence that you can find those guys. And I think the Chiefs are gaining that confidence. So I think there's this tangled web of, to be better in 20, they should have done this, but what they should have done was something that you're asking them to do before they won a Super Bowl, and it had been 50 years since this team won a Super Bowl. And so Frank Clark was a push your chips to the middle of the table move. And then I think because the offseason really started, I asked Brett Veach 2 days after the Super Bowl, he was on my show, and I said, free agency, now let's look to next year, where do you go? He goes, we have multiple paths in free agency. Those decisions or the pre-work, right? For those decisions we did in December. So think about it. It was December of 18 when they were already moving on from D Ford in 18. And Frank Clark was clearly a target. I mean, their decisions are being made now for the 21 season. Like, here's who's going to be available. Here's the different ways we can go. How do we want to play it? And so I think when they're making those decisions, they still hadn't won a Super Bowl. So part of their path for 2020 was still on this mindset of Andy Reid can't win the big one. He doesn't know how to manage his game. Brett Veach is just his former assistant. He's not this boy wonder general manager. And Kansas City is going to fire us if we don't win the championship because we blew it with D Ford last year. So the mindset that's going on when the 20 season really starts from a personnel standpoint is still one that has insecurities. And so I think, George, you're right. In an abstract and in a vacuum, the way to think about it is we're good enough. So let's never oversell on 1 year. Let's just be good enough for 10 years, and we'll grab 4 of these as opposed to being the best, the favorite, which, as we talked about last time, puts them at what, 21, 22%? Sell out for that and then make ourselves worse for 3 years. But I think you do have to remember the psyche and the mindset of what this organization was when a lot of the decisions were made on how this season was going to be put together.
Right, and the percentage doesn't change with Frank Clark.
But the thing about
and I agree, I'm with you. You know that.
Well, both of us, I think, all of us agreed that the Chiefs should trade Chris Jones. Ultimately, the thing that makes it thorny is he's a better player than Frank Clark by probably a country mile.
By a lot.
And unfortunately, the Chiefs take on dead cap basically every single year with Frank Clark until 2022. Well, no, every single year, but it's cheaper to cut him than to keep him in 2023. So they're stuck with him for a long time. And so
actually, I think there might be an out after 21. It would be a really big hit, but he becomes cheaper to cut than keep, I think, after 21. Now, maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe
that's
post-June. Post-June 1. Still post-June 1, I guess they have like $500,000 in savings that they get out.
We'll do part 2 of the Frank Clark podcast at another time. I have some quick hitters for you before we get out of here. Speaking of players that maybe you want to go back on, you're back in the draft. Pick number 32.
Yeah,
it's up. Kansas City Chiefs select. Are you going back and picking someone else? And do you think the Chiefs would go back and pick someone else?
I don't think they would. First of all, we haven't seen much of him, but Le'Veon Bell has looked effective the handful of touches they've given him. And if they knew that they were going to have a shot at Le'Veon Bell at a bargain basement price, then I think they would have gone another direction. I think the Chiefs, 2 things. One, we can talk about trades. Like Chris Jones, from the people I talked to, nobody was calling, right? Nobody wanted him for whatever reason. Price, doesn't play the run. That was one of the knocks on him, but your numbers will say that he does play the run pretty well. At least now he does. That whatever dynamics were going on, there was no trading for him. There was no one. I think the Chiefs' first choice was to trade down at 32. I think they like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think they would have been thrilled to get him at 38, 42, 44, and maybe they could have gotten him there. But once the quarterback went off the board, Jordan Love went off the board, there were no calls. And so they were locked in at 32. So you can't trade down. And who's the spot you're going to go grab that is going to be definitively better? They also had Damian Williams opt out. And I think, the running back was a need. And like I said, when you've already set forward on the course that we're all in, run it back is what we're going to do, and we're about winning a second Super Bowl more than we are being in position to win a third, a fourth, and a fifth over the next 10 years, then you're kind of just sticking with plan A when you do it. So is there someone? Chase Claypool, right? I'm in agreement with you guys. Wideout is definitely going to be a big need for this team moving forward because Sammy Watkins, they got to move on from. Demarcus Robinson, they should move on from. And McCole Hardman is never going to be DK Metcalf, and that's always going to be hanging around his neck. So they need a wideout. Yeah, there's probably a guy that maybe would be better, but I don't have a problem with the pick that they did end up taking because I thought he was the best running back fit for the Chiefs in this draft.
Yeah, he's been generational.
The Chiefs have struggled at times in the red zone. They don't have a big receiver, right? Even their tight end is kind of a separation guy. I think Higgins would have really helped their offense.
Yeah,
as a sort of a boxing
receivers.
Out kind of, like Demarcus Robinson's uncle, Marcus Robinson, is actually like a wide receiver that the Chiefs could, like that kind of player is somebody they could really use, like a jump
He's available
ball.
now.
He is, right? Yeah. He's some, like the Chiefs have always, and that's why they took a swing at Calvin Benjamin. Now you can't miss him, right?
Right.
But they were really they've always looked for that receiver who could kind of be physical in the red zone. I think Higgins was maybe the miss there. I do agree. Like Edwards-Hilaire's played fine, but
it's been noticeable.
It's just interesting.
It actually has, George. I mean, I know this is your whipping boy.
I don't think
against
so.
the Texans, there was no Le'Veon Bell, and there is an element that he does bring to the team. I will say this though, he has not been able to punch it in at the goal line, and that's the big concern around here right now is red zone, which is small sample size. Like they were ninth in the NFL in red zone a couple of weeks ago. Now they've had 2 bad weeks. I think they're 24th because they've been so bad. That would be a bigger, like if this is 1993 and it's the Marty Schottenheimer Chiefs, that every touchdown they score will have 6 snaps in the red zone. Like I would be panicking about that scenario. But this team scores from outside the red zone like no team has before it. Yeah. So, they have ways to get it in the end zone, and they have a kicker that cashes in. Frankly, if they keep putting up field goals, from outside the red zone they're going to get 2 touchdowns. And if they have 4 field goals, you're at 26 points. Yeah. And so that's still a tough number for other teams to crack. And Patrick Mahomes has won his last 9 games that the Chiefs haven't scored 30. So the defense is at least doing something right.
Yeah, I think their big offseason need is a player like they've tried, and their number 2 tight end has been an utter disgrace for 10 years. And they have literally. But
at least they have a lot of 2 tight end sets they like to run because of that.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, so that to me would have been the place. The hard part for Edwards-Helaire is their offensive line is so soft in the middle that they don't punch the ball in the way that a kind of a normal football team would. But nonetheless, Soren, what is your?
But just on that, why Edwards-Helaire makes sense too is because he's a stop-start, jump cut guy that he actually can make up for some of the inadequacies in their offensive line. They've got a bunch of power forwards, basketball power forwards that pass block, and nobody who can get low and root anybody out. So he's actually a good back. I think especially when the game slows down a little bit, he'll be a more effective back with the kind of blocking that they have, which is a weak run blocking team.
Yeah. So Chiefs laying 7 this week. Chiefs 0-4 against the spread last 4 weeks. What do you think about this game, Soren?
I mean, double up, catch up. So whatever you lost last time, keep pouring it on.
The martingale.
There's no way that they're going to ice out the rest of the year. There's no way they're not going to cover the rest of the year. And to me, I like them better in these situations where games are supposed to be competitive and you get it down to 1 score. Mm-hmm. And I know you guys were talking last time about tease this game down. That's one of your anchor teases because you can get the Chiefs down to 1 point. And all they got to do basically, or 1.5, I think at the time when you guys were looking at the number. And all they got to do is win the game, and you've got that half of the teaser in. I think that, there is an avalanche coming. There is a Chiefs beatdown coming. And I think a Dolphins team that is offensively challenged may very well be that team.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. The Dolphins defense has been beating up on bad quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes is not that quarterback. And what you said, maybe my favorite thing that you said right at the beginning, Patrick Mahomes is playing much better than he was last year. Last year, he was trying to come back from injury, multiple injuries. Now, everyone forgets that because he was amazing in the playoffs. But during the regular season, he was injured.
I mean, they were 6-4 at one time last year.
Yeah,
the bar is so much higher now, and he's reaching it.
Is Patrick Mahomes the MVP?
Yes. I believe so for the reasons we've talked about. And if Aaron Rodgers wins it, listen, you're not going to hear any screaming and yelling from me. He's been brilliant as well. But, I mean, I've seen what the difference is between Mahomes and Alex Smith. And, you know, we like Alex Smith in Kansas City. He did a great job. But, you know, when he got the ball the other night, we had some texts, the guys, Jed, who works with me, and Curtis, and we were texting, and he goes, okay, we find out what Alex Smith is right now. Like, I love this. By the way, at 35, we're going to finally get to the bottom of what he is. I said, okay, let me tell you what's coming. Dink, dunk, dink, punt.
Yes, that's great.
And I was wrong. It was like dink, dunk, dink, dink, dunk, dink, dink, dunk, dink, field goal, right? Which then put the other team on the field with a chance to win. And
all he does is win.
The ball gets tipped, and there's an interception, and they win. Alex Smith did his job. I'll credit. He gave his team a lead, but he didn't finish the game. He didn't make Pittsburgh have to go get 7. The football team's defense ended up getting that done. And if you even look at his last 3 plays, they got into field goal range. They went run play, 2 yards. They went bubble screen, throw 3 yards behind the line, lose 2 yards, and then incompletion 2 yards short of the first down marker, right? Patrick Mahomes, it's 20 yards, 15 yards. Against the Raiders, 6 of 7 for 70-some-odd yards, and a touchdown. And that is the part where when he has to have it, he'll go get it. When they get the 4th down, gets added into the equation. And Reid's been, aggressive compared to other NFL coaches, but he needs to get even more aggressive because you got a guy who's completing 67% of his passes, and anyone, anywhere on the field that's open, he'll get him the football. And so that's going to be difficult for anybody to stop.
So when someone says Aaron Rodgers has a worse supporting cast, your response is?
I mean, Devontae Adams versus Tyreek Hill. I know a lot gets made of when they were picked, but, Tyreek Hill was a 5th-round pick. Travis Kelce was a 3rd-round pick. Demarcus Robinson, I think, was like a 4th. They did sign Sammy Watkins for big money, but he's not that great, right? So, like, they have guys that are great. Devontae Adams is great, but somehow it doesn't count because he wasn't a first-round pick. And there's that stat about Mercedes Lewis being the only first-round pick that's ever caught a touchdown from Aaron Rodgers. Allen Lazard wasn't drafted. All right, that's fine. Neither was Damian Williams. But somehow the Chiefs were talented because they've got Damian Williams in the backfield last year. So I think the Packers have talent, but because there's that unique stat about no first-rounders around Rodgers, it gets discounted more. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I know it's nothing great, but he's a big, tall, long, fast wideout. And every now and then they don't cover him. And when he runs wide open down the field, Rodgers hits him. I mean, it's kind of like the same thing with Demarcus Robinson. Every now and then Mahomes scrambles around for 9 seconds, and the DB loses Demarcus Robinson, and he catches a ball in the end zone, and people think he's great. And I hope they do think he's great, and somebody gives him a big free agent contract, and the Chiefs get draft picks for him next year. Because I'm here to tell you, he's not great.
Also, Mitchell Schwartz is like the 4th best player on the offense, and he's been out the whole year. The Packers' offensive line is a lot better than the Chiefs. I mean, I would just say that it is close. I think Rodgers has had a fantastic year, and I think people are going to probably gravitate to voting for him because he's played so much better this year than he did last year, whereas Mahomes has sort of continued to play the way he's played the whole time.
The narrative around the Rodgers revenge tour, absolutely. My response would be, okay, Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, Watson.
Talk about a guy whose supporting cast has just been burned to the ground. I want to get you out of here on this. You've been incredibly generous with your time. You are in Kansas City. You talk to Mahomes and Reid and all these guys, and I just love hearing stories. You have any story that you like to tell? Maybe it's something that people in Kansas City would know, but we're out here in Cincinnati freezing our asses off, eating chili.
Is it just anything about the Chiefs, like behind the scenes?
Anything.
I'll give you one. So Andy Reid, I have on the show last year, and you guys know at the end of my interviews, I do a thing called the Final Four, which is just kind of 4 off-the-wall questions. And so with Reid, it was getting on towards Halloween, and I said, "What's your favorite Halloween candy?" And he says, "Peanut M&Ms. They just speak to me." Right? So there's a group of guys, of which I know one of the guys, they're construction workers. And they're called the Lot J Wingnuts, I think. is what they call themselves, and they are out waiting in line in normal times. Right now, there's limited capacity, but this is last year, normal times. They're out at like 6 o'clock in the morning, parked with the pre-tailgate going on as they wait for them to open the gates to get in. And so as Andy Reid comes in and the player or coaches that'll come in, players aren't getting there that early usually, but as they come in, they block this left lane for the coaches to come by. Well, the wingnuts all line up along there, right? And they're on that left side. So as Coach Reid comes in, they all talk to him. They wave. He knows. He puts the window down. He chats with them for a little bit on his way in. And they gave him like 20 bags of the 1 pound peanut M&Ms, right? And so I bring him on like a month later. I have him on and we're talking. And he's like, yeah, by the way, you got to stop because I'm going to be like 400 pounds because I got all these peanut M&Ms from the guys out at the stadium. And I said, well, okay, then what's your favorite vegetable? And he says tomatoes. And so next game he's rolling in and they've got all these things of tomatoes for him ready to give it to him. So Reid, he's Mr. Coach speak, and he's very like, I think people, because he does such a good job of being kind of jovial, and certainly people have been rooting for him for a couple of years. You don't realize how much of a stone cold control freak he is, but he still has time for the fans and interacts with them. And those guys absolutely adore him because he gives them just a couple of minutes, maybe like 45 seconds, 2 minutes tops on his way in, and has that interaction with the fans that, has made the game day experience very special for them.
That's an awesome story, and he was very generous. He probably said tomatoes so that he could make some ketchup and give it to his quarterback.
Yeah.
Look at him. Soren, you are wonderful. We thank you for hanging out with us, and I'm sad that you're not in Miami right now, on South Beach. But we'll be there again. Florida, we'll be there again soon.
We're looking for it. Will happen. And guys, hey, keep up the great work. You guys know it. You're my top podcast. I listen to you guys every single time. If I haven't heard you, it's number one on the board. So keep up the great work that you guys do.
Soren Petro.
Thanks, Soren.
Legend. Thank you, sir. Soren Petro is a great man, good friend, awesome dude. He actually he wanted to send us, he has the barbecue hookup in Kansas City.
I think he may or may not have already sent that to me.
Yeah, it
was amazing.
He sent you barbecue from Kansas City. I mean, that is a good man.
He's a good person.
Yeah, he's good people.
He's also like really sharp about these things. Like we go on we go on a lot of radio shows, and obviously we talk to very smart people. But like,
of course.
But it's when you go on with him, it's like you actually have to bring your A game because he's very, very good.
Yes, he tests you. That's how you end up staying on the radio. That's how he's done it. We will be back with you and I, Saturday night, PFF Daily Betting Podcast. It's always a ton of fun. And then, of course, after the Buffalo Bills beat the brakes off of the Pittsburgh Steelers, you and I will again be here. I may or may not bring a bottle of tequila in case that does happen. Just saying. Thank you guys for hanging out. We'll see you later. Peace.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.